Awesome. All right, this looks great. So pay attention over here. I believe it or not, go figure. This morning I was grating cheese for tomorrow's pizza Wednesday. By the way, on the menu this week is pasta fagioli on Friday, which is a fancy name for bean soup. That's what we're actually going to start prepping today. I'm going to prep the stuff today. I probably won't be able to actually cook it until tomorrow or Thursday, but a soup is always best made the day before so that you can have the flavors marry and then finished on the day of. But I nicked my thumb. I tell you guys, number one cause of accidents in the kitchen, peelers and box graters. I was grating cheese and talking to my colleagues, and I nicked this upper part of my thumb here. And so to not get blood and everything, I put a small bandage on. But in order to keep the bandage dry, I'm going to put a glove on. So go figure. Otherwise, your hands are your best tools. But for today, I'm wearing the gloves because Murphy's Law. I guess it just makes sense that I would cut myself on the day that I'm going to show you a knife demonstration. So I'm going to set myself up. Manuel, can I steal your station and move you to the other table if you don't mind? Thank you. Yeah, if you don't. So, Manuel, these guys, you did a great job by holding this for me. Or get another cutting board, or you can work out of here. You're basically going to cut them really small. So I'm going to start with a potato that we've already peeled for you. Okay. When we peel potatoes, these were just put into water so they wouldn't oxidize. You guys know that avocados and apples, you ever make a pie or you cut a potato, they go brown. So by putting them in the water, it's the water that keeps the air off of them and stops them from going brown. So I'm just going to rinse them off a little bit. They've been peeled. When you go to use a peeler, it doesn't really matter to me what style peeler that you like. It's what's most comfortable to you. You might be most familiar with something like this particular style of peeler, but this one is the one that I particularly like, the wider one. And I just wanted to show you. Let me come over here so you guys can see the camera. When you set up your station, sir, you want to make sure that it's comfortable to you. I'm working here. When you work in an industrial kitchen and you have to do hundreds of potatoes or certain types of product, you want to make sure that you are going to, be comfortable, because you're going to have a really bad day or a really bad back if your posture is not right. So this is what I mean by a non-slip mat affixed in front of me. And then I take a green cutting board, because I'm cutting fruits and vegetables. I place it over top of the non-slip mat, and this stops my cutting board from sliding around. These are the two different types of peelers that I was telling you about. You always want to peel away from you. These little ends, the things that you see on the ends of the peeler, are actually very functional. They can help take out blemishes. If I had a brown spot in a potato, I can use the end little plastic piece to come in and pull out an eye or an imperfection. You see that? Sometimes they break off because they're cheap, but that's actually what it's used for. When you're going to peel something, you want to make sure that you are on a flat surface. And when you're peeling down, put the peeler down, and I'm peeling away from me, not towards me or not up in the air or not over a garbage, because if it slips out of my hand, it's going to fall into the garbage. So over the kitchen sink, over a cutting board is ideal, so that if it does slip, it doesn't fall into the garbage. And then anytime you're peeling, I'm peeling away from me. So when I put pressure down on the carrot, I peel away from me. I'm not going to cut myself. You know what I mean? You want to be smart in how that you peel something. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to get this cube back over here just to show you for size what I'm dealing with. This is a medium dice example. Remember? Who remembered the measurement on that? Mark, how big was the medium dice? Do you remember the measurement? Right, or half an inch. Okay? And then therefore, how big would the, Maggie, how big would the small dice be? If medium dice is half an inch or 12 mils, yeah, and then 1/8 of an inch, okay? It is the large dice that only gets 1/4 of an inch bigger. The size is really, really important. So let me show you with I guess I can borrow this knife. No one's using this for a sec. This is a chef's knife. We're going to learn the parts of the knife. I'll explain it again in a minute. I am right-handed. Is anybody in here left-handed? It's okay if you are. Anybody in here left-handed? Okay, 2. Yusuf, just you. So you're going to be opposite of me. But when I hold the knife in my hand, I want my index finger and my thumb to pinch the knife at what we call the bolster, and I put my 3 fingers around the blade. You've probably been holding the knife like this your whole life. or you probably held it like this. Believe it or not, that's actually not the proper way to hold a knife. So if you have been doing that for the last, 15, 16, 17 years of your life, it might take a little bit to break the habit, but you really want to get into the habit of pinching it here. I forgot to show you before I put my glove on, but I actually have a very thick, hard callus or blister, not like a callus on my finger, because I've been doing knife skills for so long that every time I chop a lot, the metal rubs against this part of my finger and it's just sort of hard. It's par for the course. They call it a cook's callus. Okay. Anyway, so I want to grab the knife like this, and then with my non-dominant hand, my left hand, you guys know the Addams Family, that creature called the Thing. Imagine that your hand is the creature, the Thing, if you will. You place your hand flat on a cutting board, and then you rock your hand forward so that the tips of your fingers are behind the knuckle. So if I'm showing you like this, my hand is flat on the ground. I pop it up, but I'm moving it forward so that my knuckles are more extended than the tips of my fingers. So when I go to chop something and I use a knife, the tips of my fingers are not exposed. So when I have proper technique, anytime I bring the knife down, I know that my fingers are protected. As long as I take care to keep my thumb tucked back, I cannot cut myself. Okay? It is such a positive or strong technique. It's called the pinch and claw technique. It's pinched with your dominant hand, and it's clawed with your non-dominant hand. So the first thing I want to do is I want to take this potato and I want to make a bunch of medium dice with it. So the first thing I need to do is, the potato is not round. So the first thing I need to do is very carefully take my chef's knife. And by the way, when it comes to chef's knives, there are different lengths. There is a 6-inch or an 8-inch or 5-inch. There are different lengths of blade. If you're a taller person or you have larger hands, it is the knife that feels most comfortable to you in your hand, okay? If you're smaller and you have shorter hands, don't use too big of a knife, okay? These knives are professionally sharpened. They are very sharp, so it's very important to be mindful. But if you practice that technique of pinch and claw, you will severely mitigate any cuts to yourself because nothing is exposed. So if you just follow what I'm doing, you almost cannot cut yourself, okay? So the first thing I want to do is I want to take a little piece off of this potato so it doesn't wobble. I'm just going to pick up my knife really carefully and take the first part of the knife and just make a little slice like this on the bottom of the potato, and I want to flip this up. Remember how we talked about chuchime? Potatoes are one of those things that are notoriously starchy, so when you cut, it sticks to the blade. Okay, I'll show you a little trick about potato when you use the knife. For the majority or most part, you end up using the lower part of the knife when you chop something. But if I want to stop something from sticking to the knife, I can use the end and just drag it. I'll show you what I mean. When I chop like this near the end, you see it sticks to the knife. But if I use the tip of the knife and I drag it like this, it does not stick to the knife. You see how I'm dragging the knife and it's not sticking? Whereas if I cut it like this, it sticks. Do you see that? Because of the starch. So you have to, if you learn how to use the knife, the lower part for chopping and the other part, the finer part for making little cuts, it'll help you. Okay? Just going to move this all aside for, let me just get another bin to keep my potatoes underwater so they don't oxidize while I'm talking to you. I'm going to use these potatoes in soup, so if they were a little bit softer, it would be totally fine. Soup is one of those great dishes that if you had a carrot that was a bit flaccid, a piece of celery that wasn't as fresh, an onion that started to sprout, it's okay because it's all going to go into liquid and it's all going to boil for a very long time. What is the goal of soup? It's to make the vegetables soft in liquid when you cook it, right? So it's very, very important that you use the ingredients that are available to you in the fridge. I'm always using cold water here. I'm just going to quarter fill this just to put it here on my table so I can put my little pieces in when I'm done. Okay, so first, now that I have a flat surface to work from, the first thing, I'm just going to square off the other end just so I have a 90-degree angle to work from. So now I have the bottom 90 and this top 90. First thing I want to do is, if I want to make medium dice, I need to make a slice or a plank as thick as the slice that I'm going to be tackling. Right now, I'm going to be tackling a 1/4 inch or a 12 millimeter slice or 1/2 inch. So that means the first thing I need to do is make my cut a 1/2 inch thick. I know by eye how thick a 1/2 inch is, but if you're not sure, you can use the die as a guide. And I'm literally just going to line up the edge of my knife with that piece of die there, and I'm going to bring my knife down in a straight line. So I now have cut myself a 1/2 inch thick plank. You see this here? So I have a 1/2 inch thick. Now, because I cut it 1/2 inch thick this way, I'm going to cut it 1/2 inch thick this way. So if I cut off the end, it looks like a perfect square. It's not a rectangle, it's a perfect square because I cut the one side 12 millimeters or 1/2 inch, and I cut the other side a 1/2 inch. So therefore, now I have this stick, and if I take a little piece off, if I cut it 1/2 inch this way and 1/2 inch this way, if I cut 1/2 inch this way, look what happens. I now have a medium die, and if I put it up next to my dice, look at that. It is the same size. You see that? I know it's on a little slight delay there, but you can see that is the general concept for whatever you want to do for medium dice, okay? So if I want to make these cubes again, the same thing, good morning, miss. I take the end of my knife, and I'm just going to continue to cut my potatoes into medium dice, and I have medium dice cubes. I'm just going to place them here. I'll show you. Show you another example. If I want to make small dice, which is half the thickness of medium dice, I'm going to not go 1/2 inch. There's 1/2 inch. I'm going to go 1/2 to 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch. So I'm going to make a 1/4 inch slice on my potato just like this. Slice it all the way through. Then I have a 1/4 inch slice. Because I cut it 1/4 inch this way, I'm going to cut it 1/4 inch this way. And if I take a little piece off the end to square it and I cut a piece off the end, I have an example of a small dice. Here, I'll show you side by side so you can see the size. This, by the way, what I just cut here is what we call bâtonnet. This 1/4 inch stick is your French fry, basically. Okay, you see that? All of the sticks, when you cut a piece off the end of them, they have a cube with the exception of fine julienne, which I'll explain in a minute. But so I just want to show you so I can take this again, and I can take my knife and I can cut little medium dice cubes here, like such. And then the same idea behind small dice, I can go the other way and do brunoise. Brunoise is the smallest of the cubes. It is, think about a risotto or a rice dish where you'd want any of the fruits or vegetables to be smaller than the grain of rice. That's where you would use brunoise. I would take, again, my potato, and if this was my medium dice, half of that would be my small dice, half of the small, which would be 1/8 of a slice. I make a 1/8 slice like this all the way down, and because I cut it 1/8 thick this way, I cut it 1/8 thick this way. This is known as julienne. If I take a piece off the end and square off the end of my julienne, I now have brunoise. So on my cutting board here, you can see I have an example. Brunoise. I'll just wait for that. It's on a small delay here. Watch this. You'll see. I love this. This is awesome. I have brunoise, and then I have medium dice, or excuse me, small dice, medium dice, and then large dice I haven't done yet. So I think this potato's big. I'll get another potato to give me large dice because this one's a bit small now. And again, I'm just taking time to put these underwater. I'll take another potato here. Again, same idea. Square off the end. Have a flat surface to work from. Square off the side. Just put this underwater for a second. And then if this is my medium dice, I need to go a 1/4 inch bigger. So I'm going to make a 3/4 inch plank this way. Because I cut it 3/4 inch this way, I'm going to cut it 3/4 inch this way. I square off the end of it. It should be a square. And then I just square it off. And then there I have an example of my potatoes. I have the large dice, the medium dice, the small dice, and the brunoise dice. And then inside the water, I place my other planks. But with potatoes, it's not too bad. It's pretty easy because they're pretty soft. When you get to other things like carrots, I'll just leave this here so I can show you for a sec. You have to be a little more patient because the carrots are a little harder. It's the same concept. I'm going to work in probably thirds on the carrot just so I'm safe. I'm going to cut a third of the piece of this carrot off, move this carrot aside. My carrot is rolling around, so I want to take time to really carefully claw my non-dominant hand, take a little piece off of the carrot, move that to the side so I have a flat surface to work from. Always you want a flat surface to work from so you don't run the risk of hurting yourselves. I'm going to do the same thing to the other edge of the carrot and just square it off so I have a 90-degree angle. And now that I have a 90-degree angle, I can go ahead and I can start making my cuts. If I want to start with my Brunoise dice, I'm going to cut 1/8 of a plank like this. Oops. See that one? I didn't take care to cut it very nice. I have a thick end on one side and thin on the other, so I'm going to try that one more time. I'm going to make a 1/8 of an inch cut this way, and because I cut it 1/8 this way, I cut it 1/8 this way, and then the same idea, I square off the end, and there's an example of a Brunoise of a carrot, and then I have the Julienne equivalent. I now switch up to my small dice, which is a 1/4. I cut my plank, a 1/4 of an inch plank. I lie it down. I do the same thing. I cut a 1/4 stick this way, cut off the end, and I have an example of small dice, and then I can do the same thing to my medium dice. I come and I get my measurement. I cut it 1/2 inch this way. Because I cut it 1/2 inch this way, I have to cut it 1/2 inch this way. Take a little piece off the end of it, square it off so it's straight. Cut off the end. There's my medium dice, and I'm just moving down the line. I can cut another piece of carrot off to make my large dice. Again, square off the edge like this, square off this edge, give myself 3/4 of an inch this way, and because I did it that way, I got to do the same thing this way. Cut off the end, and there's an example of the other cuts from carrot into potato. When you imagine, one other thing I want to show you about a knife when you're cutting for the most part is you almost want to imagine the only thing that your dominant hand really does is move the knife up and down. Almost imagine that the back of the knife is on a wheel and it's just literally moving like this, like up and down. So it's on a little wheel and it's sort of just going around and around and around like this. You never lift the knife higher than your knuckle. This way you mitigate cutting yourself. So if I keep the knife this hand and I want to chop this carrot down and I keep my fingers tucked back, the only thing I'm using my thumb to actually push the carrot towards the knife, because this knife just stays in one direction. And then watch, I'll show you what I do. If I want to cut this carrot, I'm just going to up and down, move it through, and I'm not going higher than my knuckle so I can't cut myself. And then when you're able to master speed, you can keep it down. And my fingers are tucked back. I will never really cut myself. So when I get these knife skills down, watch how quick I can turn all of these into cubes for soup very quickly. I know it's hard to see from there, but I'm just using my fingers tucked back, and I am really able to look. I'm not even thinking about it. I'm just squaring these off, and I'm able to make all of these for soup really quickly by practicing the pinch and claw technique. I'm tucking my hands back. My fingers are never exposed, and I'm just moving through the paces by basically small dicing all of my business. I just keep cutting it in half, and look at the pace which I'm able to work at. I'm not too worried about everything being in so much of a shape for this because it is for soup, so a lot of these things would get hidden. But if I was doing a roast potato or something, or for a presentation, I would want to take the time. But for soup, I'm not too worried. As long as they all have to be very similar in size so they cook the same, okay? What you don't want to have is something like this and say a larger piece, like this to cook, because what would happen is this would be crunchy and not cooked all the way through, and this would probably turn into mush or something. But because I'm going to be making the soup and sweating everything, these are all in the right similar wheelhouse of size. It's going to work for me. Let me show you with a couple of onions here if I can, just to show you guys. These guys are doing the same thing that I'm showing you over here, just at another pace. So I'll move all this off to the side. Carrot, celery, and onion, by the way, is the backbone or the basis of French cuisine and cooking. It's known as a mirepoix. Does anybody know how to spell that? Well, besides, it's spelled Mirepoix. It's pronounced mirepoix, and it is twice as many onions. You're going to want to write this one down. It is twice as many onions as celery and carrots. Okay, so if I wanted to make a mirepoix, I could have 4 onions, and then I would have, 2 celery and 2 carrot. Or if I had 8 onions, then I would have 4 celery and 4 carrot. But it's always twice as many onions as carrots and celery, and that's known as a mirepoix. The basis of soups, any stocks, if I'm roasting something in the oven, it's always going to be a mirepoix. Are you okay, Nathan? So I'm going to put all this, I'm going to marry all this together, by the way. You can take a break if you want to cut celery, if that's bothering you on the onion for a sec. So Nathan's crying. This is a great opportunity to talk about why do you cry when you cut an onion? When you cut an onion, okay, and what you heard Gordon Ramsay say, There is a root on the onion, and that's the part that grows in the ground. As soon as you lop off that root, it starts to cry or bleed, so to speak. And what ends up happening is there is a gas inside of that onion. This is the reason why I keep the onions in the fridge, because we know that cold air keeps gases low to the ground. That's why they ever tell you in a fire, if there ever is a fire and your house is on fire and there's lots of smoke, crawl along the ground because the hot air rises. So by keeping onions in the fridge, it keeps the gas a bit cooler, and it keeps the gas closer to the workbench, which is what we're chopping on, and it sort of slows the process by the time it rises to our eye. But what ends up happening is that gas inside the onion rises, it hits your eye, and as a natural defense mechanism, your eye starts to blink and sort of coat itself with a liquid, and then it starts that chain reaction of you crying. So there really isn't any way to stop you from crying from cutting an onion. The older an onion is, the more acid it has inside it, the more likely you are to cry. There are many different types and varieties of onions, you know, Vidalia and white and spring and leek and chive and so on and so forth. But the milder the onion, the less likely you are to cry. The older and the larger and the drier the onion is, the more likely you are to start the tears. Okay? Putting a matchstick in your teeth, wearing sunglasses, standing on one foot, all of those gimmicks, none of that stuff works. Okay? Let me show you how to dice an onion. They've cut it in half through the root. Okay? So then I have two halves equally on the table. I'm going to use a pinch and claw grip because an onion is already in layers. I'm going to pinch with my dominant hand and claw with my other hand. I'm going to make little slices in the onion as close as I can to the end like this without going all the way through. Okay? And then I can turn my knife this way and we'll just come back at it. And then when I come and cut it, it instantly turns into dice. So when I'm really good at it, I claw my hand. I can make slits like this. Look how quick. Cut it this way if I want and come back this way. And I have diced my onion. When you get to the end and you're not sure and it's really wobbly, you always want to be safe with something. You would never cut something like this where it's really wobbly on you. You always lie it down on a flat surface. Make your cuts safe where the knife is cutting away from you. I can make one little small cut this way, and then again, my fingers are tucked back, my thumb is not exposed, and I'm making little cuts through, and I'm using the layers of the onion to cut it. And you see, there is no time for tears. I'm already done. You see, I'm just going to steal this bowl and keep my cutting board. This isn't a, I have a really bad habit of using my knife as my sort of bench scraper. You guys are going to want to get a bench scraper for you and use the bench scraper to pick up your bits and pieces on the table, okay? But when I'm telling you, when you get this, for example, there's no point in me cubing it because it already is small. This is a great example of how do I make these two carrots the same size even though they are different. This one I can straight up just cut in little rounds so they end up being small pieces. This other carrot, I might lop it at the half, split it down the middle, quarter it from the stick, come back this way, and cut the other ends small. And this guy, I cut a little piece off the end. I flip it this way, cut a piece, snap, lie it down, quarter it, cut it in half, cut this in half, and then I line it all up this way. When I'm done at the end of the day, they're all the same size, even though the carrot, you see? I know that the camera's on a delay, but even though it was on different sizes, when I'm done, all of the carrot is all the same size. Just watch that for a sec, you see? Let me show you for a celery. Same thing, really quickly. Here I have a celery that's been washed. I have a really big end of the celery, and I have a little, and by the way, we use all the celery. The leaves are the most tender part, the hearts of celery. The whole thing is called a head of celery. These are called stalks, or sometimes referred to as ribs of celery. What's really important is that when you wash produce in the produce sink, you take care to wash on the base because this stuff grows in the dirt. So you got to take really, really good care to make sure that you remove all of the dirt. I can take this celery and just cut it here at the big piece. Most people will cut the celery and give you little U rounds like that when you cut it. However, that's not what I want. I also want to dice the celery as well. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take the celery, I'm going to split it down the stalk so I have sticks. This other piece, I might have to split it in three so I end up with the same size because it is a larger piece. You have to use your judgment depending. If you have a really big carrot or a really big potato, you have to use your judgment. And here I am with my fingers tucked back. I'm coming down. I'm just small dicing this carrot. And then this other piece is already small, so I don't need to split that. I cut it here. I rib it or split it in three. I split this one lengthwise all the way down the end. I line it all up together like this. Obviously, you don't have to work this quick. Okay, I've been doing this for like 35, 40 years, so I have it down. But it is the technique that I am most interested. When we're going to do knife skills very soon, I'm going to give you all the same thing with a cutting board. I'm going to give you examples of potatoes and carrots. I'm going to say, okay, Maggie, I'm going to say, okay, Connor, make me, 5 examples of brunoise. Show me half a cup of large dice. Take this celery and make it julienne or bâtonnet, etc. Okay, watch this. Garlic, really quickly. What time? Oh, it's already 22. I got a piece of garlic here, right here. Sorry, I'm just going to steal this for you guys for a second. This is known as a head of garlic. The whole thing is a head. It grows in paper, just like the paper on an onion. It's very important that when you're prepping your garlic or your onion, that you take the time to remove all the paper. What's really nice about garlic is if I just take this and press on it with my hand, the whole thing sort of comes apart on the counter like this, so I can just lie it all down. There's a lot of gimmicks out there where they tell you to put garlic in a mason jar and shake it and take all the paper off, but I show you something really interesting. If I take a second to just get the majority of the paper off here, so I'm left with just a couple of the cloves on the board. I'm going to take the side, there, I have a nice clean cutting board. I'm going to take the side of my chef's knife with the knife away from me, and I'm just going to put a little bit of pressure. I'm just going to smash this a little bit like this, and then look what happens. This garlic comes completely out of the paper like this. It comes right off, and I'm left with just the clove ready to rock and roll. I'll show you again. I just take my knife, a little bit of pressure, I smash it like this a little bit, and I can pull the paper right off of the garlic. This way, same thing. Take it, little smash like this, pull all the paper off. All the work, by the way, in cooking is all done in the preparation. The cooking is actually the easy part. If I had a whole smorgasbord here of all types of vegetables, different types of vegetables cut at different sizes and shapes and lengths, I can cook you all kinds of meals in a fraction of the time, right? Because all the work is in the prep. It's really nice to be able to prep something. So when you get better at cooking and when you sort of have your own house and you're making meals for your family and your kids and you have a game plan for what you want to eat Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you can take a little bit of time on a Sunday or a Monday afternoon and prep for the week. If I know I'm making soup on Thursday and I'm having chili on Wednesday and I need celery in both things, I prep everything ahead of time so that it only takes me a nominal amount of time when I need to cook. Okay? It's really, really important. So now that I have this little bit of garlic here, I'll show you. There's a couple ways to mince this. It's the same thing, very similar to an onion. You want to take that small little root off the end. Garlic is notoriously sticky. It has like a lot of little sugar in it, and once it makes a paste and you start to smash it, it gets really, really sticky. Here's what I want to tell you about garlic. When you use a whole clove by itself like this and you roast it, maybe you went to Spago's, they give you that little basket of roasted garlic and it's cut in half, and you can literally take a butter knife and literally pull out the roasted garlic and spread it on bread. It's very mild and has a sort of softer flavor because it's been roasted. If I take raw garlic and I start to chop it small, the smaller you chop fresh garlic, the more concentrated it is. So if I leave these raw pieces of garlic like this and I just drop them in a frying pan with some olive oil and I want to make like pasta al olio, like with olive oil and garlic, and I leave them whole, I'm just infusing the oil with a little bit of that garlic oil. Whereas if I were to chop it really, really small and put it in the oil, it's going to give a much more concentrated flavor. You cannot see what they're doing over here, but they're cutting all of my mirepoix into one bowl, and the garlic's going to go in a separate bowl. We always keep the garlic separate because it is smaller. It takes less time to cook, and we run the risk of burning it. So it's very important that we understand how certain vegetables cook and when to add them and when not to add them, so that at the end we get the textures that we want. If I wanted a little bit of texture in the soup, for example, if I'm making a minestrone soup, I'm going to put my mirepoix of vegetables first because the carrots take quite a while to cook because they're a really hard, dense, fibrous vegetable. Whereas if I had, say, fresh spinach, I would probably just add that fresh spinach at the end just before I was about to serve it because it's already so tender, those leaves of spinach. If I put them in at the same time when I put in my carrots and I cook that soup for several hours, you're not even going to know there's spinach in there. It's going to become pulverized and it's going to become mushy and part of the broth, and you won't even, it's not going to have any texture at all. Okay, so I can take this garlic and I can take the tip of my knife, and just like I did an onion, I can make little slits inside the garlic, and then I can come back the other way and I can mince it like this, and I can get me a small little brunoise, or I can just literally take my knife and smash it down like this. There's another technique I want to show you is I bring the cutting board to the edge of the table. Once I've minced my garlic and I want to make a paste, I bring my knife and I turn it sideways so that this handle comes off the edge of the cutting board and the blade is sitting flat on the board. And then I'll just wait for this delay here on the thing so you guys can see in real time. I bring the knife to the edge of the counter like this, and I'm just going to pick up the blade over the edge of the garlic a little bit, and I'm just going to use the edge of the blade. I'm just going to start to smash it down, and I'm going to make a paste. Let me just chop this a little bit smaller so I can show you. Clean off the knife. I'm being really careful, by the way, when I go to clean the end of my knife, and then I'm not rushing my finger or putting it over the blade. I'm wiping off the stuff on the side of my blade away from the blade, if you can see. And now I take my knife and I literally pick it up and over, and I can smash this garlic into little paste. It's turning into a paste. I know you can't see from there, but I'm basically taking all the oil out of it. I keep bringing it back into a pile, and I just keep picking it up and bringing it over like this. I clean off my knife from time to time and up and over again, and I'm making, my fingers are on top of the knife like such. My other hand is almost putting pressure down, and I'm just a little bit at a time picking up that edge of the blade, and I'm smashing that garlic into a little paste. I just keep picking it up and over and moving it, and look at this. I have a garlic paste here. You see, you can't smell it from there. It's super concentrated. This is going to be really good for my soup. It's going to add a lot of different body and flavor to it, and I just keep all this here, and I just keep working that over and over and over again like this, and then I can smell it. It's super concentrated. That's what I want there, but this is a really sticky paste. This is a situation where you would want to clean your cutting board. I went to my sister's house. She made me some watermelon. She forgot to clean the cutting board, and I ended up eating all this garlic flavor through the watermelon because they didn't clean the cutting board. Good morning, sir. Good, how are you? Oh, hey, Brian.
Here you go.
Thank you very much.
You're
Thanks.
welcome.
Okay, see you Wednesday. Okay. Oh, right. Tomorrow is Wednesday. Sure. We're going to, that's fine, Nathan. We're going to, yeah, even if you can get it a little bit smaller, I'll just show you here for a sec. Try not to cut towards yourself, Nathan, if possible. You're going to want to cut it in sticks. Watch. It's going to rinse my hand here because I was touching money, right? Okay. You're going to want to cut it in sticks, Nathan. So you're going to want to cut it in half to be manageable. Then you're going to want to cut a long piece like this at the edge of the off first, so you have a flat surface to work from. Then cut yourself a stick, and then another stick, and then, so they're all the same size. You're going to cut them in random sticks like such. Same thing, this one I might just cut it in half because it's smaller. Cut the half in half, cut the half into a quarter, and then when I have it all lined up, I can bring it back this way, and I have my medium dice like such. And then I take this up, I can pick this up, bring it over here, and add it all to my bowl. Okay? Really quickly before the bell, one more thing. I'll just show you. Another really good thing, by the way, about a cutting board is you can flip it over. So to not get that garlic flavor, I wanted to cut something else, I can flip it over, and now I have essentially a clean cutting board. What's really important, and it's a big pet peeve of mine, is that we take time to keep our area clean and tidy up as we go, okay? A clean kitchen is a happy kitchen. Any of this paper that you do not take the time to remove will not cook down. No matter how long it's in the pot or the oven for, it'll never cook down. So you need to take time to make sure that you remove all of the paper, okay? So one more thing. Once you have, obviously we do a lot of slices in this class, a flat surface to work from. Once you master the skill and you have it like this, you can make little fine cuts. Watch how I'm able to make little fine slits in this potato just by moving this knife up and down. So I want to cut really, really thin slices. I can just take my knife, just going to move this knife up and down. My fingers are tucked back, so I cannot cut myself, okay? I'll show you. Can you see? You can see these are almost as thin as potato chips. Some of these are whip razor thin. Like there's literally probably 30, 40 cuts here. Look how thin these are. And the reason I'm able to do that, I'll show you one more time, is by the technique. Once you have a flat surface to work from, always, you lie it down flat. The only thing I'm doing with this hand is moving it up and down. It's my thumb that's pushing the potato towards the knife, but these knuckles are sort of tucked back, and that the tips of my fingers are behind the lower knuckle, and I'm not bringing the knife higher, and I'm just up and down, and I just come like this, and I'm just down, 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 down. So my thumb is moving the potato towards, and I'm never lifting it high enough. So I've really pulverized this potato. Again, the same thing into small cuts, and it's really, really small. So I know that this is interesting to see. It's going to make the most sense when you actually do it yourself. The only way to really move through proper knife skills is just trial and error. People will nick themselves, accidents will happen, but we're going to try to get you set up so that it's not too crazy. Can you leave me a couple of these for period 2, this and 3? That's probably good when you finish that. Leave me this, and you can even leave that. Finish what you're doing, okay. And then I'm going to show you one last video before the bell here, okay? Quentin, can I show that later? Okay, awesome. I'm going to show you one more video here quickly. It's holy smokes.